voting. Among other things, it's the only way to get Sean Spicer off Dancing with the Stars. So far, he's danced the Red Wedding, the Woody from Toy Story after his third divorce, and this. Cool. He is dressed and dancing there like the Chernobyl Musketeer. Please, America, put this man out of everyone's misery. But now actually seems like it might be a good time to talk about voting because Election Day is this Tuesday. Yes, there are elections this Tuesday. Depending on where you live, you could be voting for your governor, your state legislator, or even your city comptroller, which is a very important position. They comptrol the city. Without them, the city would be completely out of control. But before you vote, which you absolutely should, it may be worth asking, how much do you trust the system that counts your ballots? Because the truth is, many of us don't know the first thing about how our votes get counted.
When you cast your ballot, how do you know that they're getting it right?
That they're getting it right?
Yeah.
Oh, well, isn't that their job to get it right?
Do you trust that your vote is being recorded as intended? What do you think?
I think so.
What are you basing that on?
How do you know that they got it right?
Well, I'm sure they did.
Well,
What are you basing that
They
on?
wouldn't be.
I don't know.
They're
We put it
basic-
in the machine. I have to assume
They
they're
had
going
the-
to
they had
read
the
it
proper
correctly.
equipment.
But how do you know they're getting it right?
I can't be. There's no such thing as being dead sure, but I think I'm quite sure.
Look, I honestly get the point the interviewer is trying to make, but he is coming on pretty strong there. How are you so sure they got your vote right? Is it because you're a stupid child in a dumb adult's body? Is it because you were born yesterday in a voting booth and the first thing you did was vote like a newborn idiot? Before you go to bed, do you pull a tooth out with pliers, place the still bloody tooth underneath your pillow and then lie there waiting for the tooth fairy to suck you off? Do you do that? Do you? Do you lose sleep waiting for tooth fairy blowjobs? Then how do you know they got your vote right? But look, his overall point there is decent. We don't always know how our votes are being counted, and it's not unreasonable to have some questions about our election security. We now know that in 2016, Russian hackers targeted election systems in all 50 states. Now, what they were targeting back then was voter registration data. As for the voting machines themselves, to hear some local officials tell it, they just could not be more secure.
I could set one of these machines in the middle of Red Square in Moscow, and the Russians couldn't hack into it.
Well, don't do that! Because of course they can hack into it. They're Russians. There are precisely 3 things that they are good at: hacking, hockey, and writing books so sad they make you want to drink a potato. But as you'll see tonight, leaving our voting machines in the middle of Moscow, or indeed the middle of America, might not be the best idea, because a Senate report found that some of our voting equipment is aging and vulnerable to exploitation by a committed adversary. So tonight, let's talk about our voting machines. And first, you should know, there is no single standard voting system in this country. In some places, you vote by filling out a paper ballot and feeding it into a machine. At others, you press a button, get a printout, and then have that scanned into a different machine. And at still others, you press a touchscreen, and that's it. That's the whole voting process. And while that last option may seem like the best, it's actually, for reasons that we'll get into later, the absolute worst. Now, the reason that most of us vote on electronic machines at all has to do with the 2000 election. And for those of you too young to remember that, first, I've got to ask you, is euphoria accurate? Are you all horny, sparkly drug addicts? I'm honestly curious. I don't know any teens, and I suspect the people behind Euphoria don't either. But second, very basically, the 2000 election came down to just over 1,000 votes in Florida, which triggered a recount, which turned out to be an absolute nightmare because, unfortunately, many key Florida precincts used punch card ballots. And a major issue with punch card ballots was the fact that on some of them, little bits of paper, or chads, might not have punched all the way through, leading to images like this and non-stop news coverage like this.
Gore's hopes hang by a Chad.
Dimpled chads.
Dangling chads.
Hanging chads.
Indented chads.
Lone chads.
Another claim, chad buildup.
A pregnant chad.
The race comes down to the chads.
Yeah, it's true. Much like the third elimination in every season of The Bachelorette, it all came down to the chads. Chad G, you have the eyes of a murderer, and Chad R, you're 5'8", so Chad R, I'm afraid you have to go. Now, one result of that mess was that America became understandably nervous about punch card ballots. And in 2002, Congress passed the Help America Vote Act, offering states $3.9 billion to help administer federal elections and buy new voting equipment, which sounds great. But the then chair of the Election Assistance Commission, which distributed funding for the new machines, realised that there was a problem immediately.
I was forced to send $2.3 billion to the 50 states to buy equipment, even though the equipment was not ready to be bought.
So why'd you do it?
We had to do it. We begged Congress, let us do the research before we send the money, and Congress said no.
So the politicians knew these machines wouldn't work.
The politicians don't care. Washington believes that the machines can't be that bad because, after all, it produced them. So if they won the race, how bad can the machine be?
The machine can't be bad because it produced me. That is some faulty logic right there. It's like saying reverse cowgirl is the best sex position because it gave us Abraham Lincoln. I mean, it absolutely did. That's just a fact. But correlation does not equal causation. And reverse cowgirl does not equal Abraham Lincoln unless you're one of these two fuck machines. Look, he brought the log, she brought the cabin. That's just a history fact that I'm not willing to argue about. So, states rushed to buy electronic voting machines before they were ready to be bought. And there were already some red flags. One machine in Iowa had 300 ballots fed into it and somehow produced 4 million votes. And to meet the demand, at least one company outsourced production of the machines. And as reporters later found, quality controls were sometimes close to non-existent.
Maraming bansa na hindi nakakaalam na sa Pilipinas nanggagaling ang voting machine.
Vibar says he worked on thousands of voting machines shipped to the United States with what he says was virtually no testing done on them. Originally, a fraction of the machines underwent a so-called vibration test. And what was this quality control test?
Sinishake nila yung machine.
Yeah, that's it. They tested the machine by shaking it. Which is weird, because the only time you should ever shake a voting machine is when you're voting for Jill Stein, in which case, that's actually how you do it. You walk in, you shake the machine, and you leave. Trust me, the machine will totally record your vote for Jill Stein, just like you and I both want it to. That clip is actually from 2007, but a shocking number of machines bought back then are still in use. And aging machines can be a real problem. Some counties have found that the glue holding the touchscreen can degrade, meaning that over the years, the screen can slip out of place and register votes incorrectly. And the danger isn't just machines going wrong by accident. There is also the threat of someone gaining control of them for their own ends, because voting machines are technically computers, and computers, of course, are hackable. And it can be far easier to control a machine than you might expect, as this hacker demonstrates on a model currently used in at least 18 states.
All they have to do, this bad actor, would be to open up this machine by pressing this button right here. When it's off, removing the card reader, removing this, you don't need any tools to do this. Unplugging this, again, you don't need any tools to do this. Turning it on, all you have to do is pick this lock here with a ballpoint pen, open this up, press the red button, and we're gonna let it boot up here. Just click cancel and OK. And now I have full admin access, under 2 minutes.
Holy shit! That should have been a lot more difficult. You want hacking into a voting machine to be at least as difficult as breaking into Fort Knox, which incidentally is really hard. You need to build a big, giant wooden horse. You roll it up to the gate, and then you wait for all the guards to say, that's a fucking A-plus horse right there. Let's put that inside our fort where the gold lives. And then, while they're distracted trying to drag the horse in, you sneak in the back door and you steal the gold. It takes a lot of work, but trust me, it makes you value the gold much, much more. Now, hackers find vulnerabilities in voting machines all the time, and we've not always been great at responding. A Finnish man named Hearst once found one of the most severe security flaws ever discovered in a voting system, and he alerted the company who made the machine. They created a patch to fix the vulnerability, which is good. Unfortunately, while they put the patch out in 2006, we know the state of Georgia just never installed it. because a recent court case found their machines had not been updated since at least 2005. They'd essentially been hitting the Remind Me Tomorrow button on a critical security update for over a decade. Meaning Georgia's election systems operate at the same level of technical proficiency as every dad. His laptop weighs 21 pounds. He has a Yahoo mail address that he can't open because it only receives porn. And he has a Hotmail address he can't open because it only sends porn to his Yahoo address. His life is a beautiful mystery. And look, voting machine companies and election officials will tell you that hacks like that one take place in very controlled settings, and that it would be difficult to do that in an actual booth without people noticing. But it is not always as difficult to get some alone time with a machine as you might think.
Professor Ed Felten of Princeton performs an exercise every election day. He drives around Princeton to various polling locations, and he follows the prominent signs that say, voting here, days before the election, and then he takes photographs of unattended voting machines just sitting there. And that's for him to document that anybody can walk up to these voting machines, and anybody can manipulate them, and nobody will know.
So to recap, I've now shown you how to hack voting machines in less than 2 minutes, and how to find unattended voting machines. It's the kind of important educational work we do here at I Really Hope Putin Doesn't Watch This Show with John Oliver. And to be clear, you don't have to actually have hands-on contact with a voting machine to hack it. If it's connected to the internet, you can get into it from anywhere. Although on that front, many election officials insist you have absolutely nothing to worry about.
Our machines are not connected to the internet, and they're not going to be connected to the internet.
No state is on the internet. I find it difficult to hack something that's not on the internet.
Our voting systems are never connected to the internet.
Okay. So first, let's deal with this, because I am aware that that man is a lot. His name, and this is true, is Stan Stannart, and he's not, in fact, a Zach Galifianakis character. He's a real human and was actually the clerk for the largest county of Texas until just last year. This was his official photo, and come on! There is nothing I don't like about that picture, besides the fact that it simply hasn't winked at me yet. Oh, Stan! Right back at you, Stan at the Manat. Although I will say this, for a guy so sure that his voting systems are not connected to the internet, watch what happens when a reporter asks a very basic follow-up.
Are the Harris County voting machines connected to the internet?
Never.
So is it ever connected to a modem?
Nope. Well, I say that. It is a secure modem where we dial to an old-fashioned landline to one of our 4 drop-off sites.
But that's the internet, Stan! You literally just described the internet. It's like he said, I've never eaten a banana split, only for the reporter to ask, then what are you eating right now, Stan? Why, it's just bananas and ice cream topped with fudge. I call it a fruity phantasm. Why? So, some machines that officials insist don't connect to the internet actually do connect to the internet, and even some machines that don't connect directly to the internet are programmed with cards that have themselves been programmed on computers that connect to the internet. So your voting machine isn't connected to the internet the same way your Alexa isn't recording everything you say and sending it directly to Jeff Bezos. It's totally not doing that, except for when it's totally sometimes doing that. The truth is, every voting machine can be tampered with in some way or other. If I may quote an extremely upbeat axe murderer, pretty much everything is hackable. So the solution isn't to make unhackable machines. That's impossible. Instead, we should be making them as secure as we possibly can, while also creating systems so that we know for sure when a problem has occurred, which is an issue, because there is good reason to believe that at least one individual might try and exploit the vulnerabilities in our current system.
Is Russia, as Robert Mueller alleged, attempting to influence the 2020 elections in the United States?
I'm going to tell you a secret. Yes, sure, we're going to do that. Yes. Yeah, this is... Don't tell anybody.
listen to the laughter in that room. Putin is killing, and not just in the normal his political rivals way. Now, the good news is there is actually a consensus on what we should do here. Specifically, that after each election, we do what's called a risk-limiting audit. That's where we take a small percentage of the paper ballots at random and make sure that they match what the machines recorded. It's pretty simple. Unfortunately, most places don't currently do them, and some actually can't because they use the machines that we mentioned earlier, where you vote directly on the machine and there is no paper trail at all. They are called direct recording electronic voting machines, or DREs, and they are very bad. If something goes wrong with one of them, you would basically never know because you can't audit the results, and things have gone wrong. In one local New Jersey election, a husband and wife were both running for seats on their county's Democratic committee. The DRE machines said that they lost, but they were in the unusual position of actually knowing that that was a mistake.
I knew 33 of the people that voted for us, and we lost 33-10. And I knew that that wasn't the case.
The results had been switched with those of their opponents.
We started calling people that we thought we knew voted for us because it was just in this district of this township, and we know everybody in this district.
It's true. That woman literally went around and got signed affidavits from people saying that they had voted for her, which means one of two things. Either the machines switched the votes, or people will sign anything to avoid a face-to-face confrontation. Oh, hi, Cynthia. Yes, sorry about that election. I was really sad because I totally voted for you. What's that? You want me to affirm that statement under penalty of perjury? Well, that definitely sounds better than having this conversation, so fine. I'll sign anything to get you off my fucking porch, Cynthia. But the fact is, unless you happen to personally know everyone who votes for you on a paperless DRE machine, there is no way to verify the results. It's a pretty good case against them, which makes it, frankly, completely insane that New Jersey not only still uses them, but plans to keep using them for the 2020 election. And it's not just New Jersey. In 2016, 20% of voters voted on paperless DREs, and an estimated 12% will use them in 2020, meaning 16 million Americans spread out across all these states are set to be voting on machines that pretty much everyone agrees are deeply, deeply flawed. And if they malfunction, there could be no way of knowing, which is absolutely terrifying. Because what we have to do here is obvious. It's so obvious, in fact, even this guy understands it.
One of the things we're learning is it's always good. It's old-fashioned, but it's always good to have a paper backup system of voting. It's called paper, not highly complex computers, paper. And a lot of states are doing that.
Yeah. He's right. That's it. He's just all the way completely right. It is called paper. Paper is not a computer. It's paper. And a lot of states are doing it. Now, I'm sure everything he said around those 16 seconds was some combination of wrong, racist, and horny, but for a brief, glorious moment, he was just absolutely right and probably slightly horny. And look, the good news is, earlier this year, the House approved $600 million for states to buy new machines, with the requirement they not connect to the internet and provide a paper trail for mandatory audits. The bad news is, the Senate has got its own plan providing less than half that amount of money with none of those requirements at all, which is simply ridiculous. We can fix this, and we must fix this, because it is critically important for people to have confidence in our voting machines, and we should have more faith in our system for choosing our leaders than we do in the one that inexplicably keeps Sean fucking Spicer doing the cha-cha on national television.